In the 1930s, in Bucharest, Hungary, Vera Renz murdered her lovers. Each and every one of them. After 2 failed marriages, the beautiful Vera invited a long line of suitors.
She allures, she draws this male in. And this wouldn't be happenstance. This male would be selected by her. And she would use her allure, her tacit beauty, her money, her sophistication to draw him in a sexual way.
Vera chose married men.
This would be his last night on earth. His dinner would be well seasoned with something not to his liking that would kill him.
Vera's seductive dinners were laced with arsenic.
Arsenic is a popular method of poisoning that we've seen throughout the centuries.
What will happen, the individuals who take it, first of all, will begin to feel sick. Arsenic causes a disruption of the membranes of the stomach, something called hemorrhagic, meaning blood-filled, gastritis, meaning inflammation. So they'll get a stomach ache.
I would imagine that she would only let him know at the very end when he began to suffer intensely from the poison. She would be conveying to him that he would never leave her, ever.
But Vera's plans don't end with death.
She had a propensity for preserving her murdered males in zinc coffins in her basement.
The symbolism of trophies for serial killers is maybe something to brag about their event, even though they may not brag about it to another person. For them, they say, I've got this.
Vera collected morbid souvenirs.
A souvenir is something that a killer might keep to bring back good feelings of the individual, good feelings of the event, and something that's more personal.
For today's criminal investigators, there's an explanation for such bizarre behavior.
They want to hold on to that piece, that connection, and so people will try to hold on to bodies.
But without preservation, Vera's mementos would soon decompose.
Within 20 minutes of the time of death, our bodies begin to break down. The bacteria that are in our intestines, within 20 minutes, travel outside of our intestines and do what they do best. They start digesting things.
Vera had thought of everything. An airtight zinc casket and Vera's damp basement may have provided the ideal conditions for a type of mummification.
This is almost a museum of death of her own design. Her victims are here, they're in her control.
Anytime she wanted to go talk with them and interact with them, she could. This would, for a while, serve a purpose and meet a need that she had. Eventually, it would cease to do so, and I think that's probably when she would go out and get another victim.
What drove Vera Renz to such a macabre ritual? Modern analysis suggests she was simply looking for love. Vera replaced love from the living with love from the dead. She killed for more than a decade until a suspicious wife called police to Vera's basement. They found 35 zinc coffins. Among the preserved victims, her 2 missing husbands. Madame Delphine LaLaurie was an A-list socialite with money and connections.
Her husband was a surgeon, a very prominent surgeon in the city, and she was from a very wealthy French family. They were best known in the city for their lavish cocktail parties that they would throw, entertaining the upper echelon in the city, and they threw them quite frequently.
But Madame LaLaurie was not all she seemed.
As she was preparing for one of her cocktail parties, she was being attended to by a little 12-year-old slave girl by the name of Leah. Leah accidentally pulled a madame's hair as she was combing it. And in a fit of rage, Madame LaLaurie pulled out a bullwhip and proceeded to beat this little girl.
Trying to flee the beating, the little girl plunged to her death in the courtyard below.
Madame LaLaurie was brought before the courts for the death of this child. But because she was so influential, because she was rubbing elbows with all the upper echelon, she was given a mere slap on the wrist, a mere $300 fine.
Madame LaLaurie's notoriety would have ended there if it wasn't for a fire soon after. The story is still talked about by firemen today.
Well, that night, the alarm came in for our house, and when the firemen got there, they found a fire in the kitchen, and the slave told the firemen to go up to the 3rd floor of the house and check it out.
The door was bolted and locked from the outside, yet they could hear screams and cries from within. Seasoned firemen who had obviously had experience with death before literally fell to their knees vomiting from the stench of death inside the room.
The firemen found a house of horror. It took a house fire to lay bare Madame LaLaurie, the New Orleans socialite, as a serial killer.
Upon entering one of the apartments, the most appalling spectacle met their eyes.
Corpses, people, slaves that were chained to the wall.
7 slaves, more or less horribly mutilated, were seen suspended by the neck, with their limbs apparently stretched and torn from one extremity to the other.
They found some that were buried under the flooring, mutilated bodies that were cut up.
Language is powerless and inadequate to give a proper conception of the horror which is a scene like this must have inspired.
It was just a real tragedy up there that they found.
That Madame LaLaurie had blood on her hands seems beyond doubt. Her motivation is less clear. One theory suggests Madame LaLaurie and her doctor husband were doing their own scientific research.
Well, people used to dig up graves and dissect bodies. This wasn't usually something done for a bizarre sacrifice. This was done out of human curiosity.
In the 1830s, knowledge of anatomy was limited. A curious but warped mind might see powerless slaves as lab rats.
And back then, we didn't even know precisely how blood circulated and how the body worked. It was fascinating.
That might have been the excuse, a quest for medical knowledge, but to be performing it on live people? No, it goes way beyond that.
The scant surviving evidence also points to another motivation.
The only word that comes to mind is a sadist. A sadist derives pleasure from inflicting pain on another individual. The pain can be physical or emotional or sexual, but the sadist delivers pleasure.
Sadist, scientist, or avenger? We may never know.
Somehow the LaLauries escaped. Now, it's a mystery what happened to them. Many people believe that they wound up going down to the river and jumping ship. Some people say they even went back to Paris.
Whatever Madame LaLaurie's motivation, one thing, more than anything else, made her secret slayings possible. Power. In 1911, the sick and the wealthy were lured to these backwaters from Europe and the US on a promise. They came to cure their ills. Two wealthy sisters, Claire and Dora Williamson from England, were typical of Dr. Hazzard's patients.
Is everything suitable?
Yes, thank you.
The girls, they came, they thought this was going to be a holiday in the country. They were excited about going. They couldn't wait to get to Olalla. They had no idea what was in store for them.
For an upfront fee of $100 a week, the sisters would receive only a starvation diet and a place to die.
The diet that she developed was very strenuous. I mean, it was limited to 2 8-ounce glasses of a broth a day. Either a tomato or an asparagus broth was what she gave her patients.
Very good. Well done.
As a rule, fasting has been known throughout the centuries as a way to purify one's body and therefore purify one's mind. There is no medical benefit to starving. Starvation causes death.
Common sense should have warned patients off the treatment within days, but Dr. Hazzard's power usually prevailed. The sisters, like many others, persevered.
After we have gotten over the first day or two, maybe even 3, we are no longer going to feel hunger. We're going to at first feel a bit alert when we're starting to burn all the fats. But as we get through the fat and start burning off the protein, we're going to begin to get listless.
I think Dr. Linda Hazzard was a serial killer, and a sadistic one at that. You don't even have to be a doctor to know if somebody is only fed diluted tomato juice on a daily basis that they eventually will die. She knew this, and she continued on with her experiment.
First, our immune systems are going to start to malfunction. And along with that, we're going to have this profound weakness. And then, eventually, we're not going to be able to maintain our blood pressure.
They grew weaker and weaker, but each time that they would complain about it or ask about it, Dr. Hazzard would tell them, the cure is imminent, just a few more days. hang on just a bit longer, and you'll have perfect, robust health. It'll just come in an instant.
Claire and Dora Williamson consumed only broth for 2 whole months. Dr. Hazzard's allure was finally overtaken by the will to live.
Claire knew, this is my last chance. If I don't get out of here, I'm gonna die. And if I die, my sister's going to die. So Claire, somehow, we don't know how she even had the strength, somehow she crawled out of that attic and got out there to the woods and made it halfway down the hill before she realized she could go no further.
Feeble and disoriented, Claire's escape was short-lived.
Claire!
But when she heard Dr. Hazzard's voice, it just like a spell, something came over her and she realized, I can't fight this. Unfortunately for Claire, there'd be no saving her. There was no end to Dr. Hazzard's, really, her skill, if you want to call it, or her evil. I mean, not only did she treat these patients as their physician, she also acted as a coroner and did the post-mortem examinations on each one of her patients.
Dr. Hazzard's failures were never registered. To the medical world, her victims died of various diseases.
The fact that the patient weighed less than 50 pounds was never on the certificate. It was always cirrhosis of the liver or something like that would be listed as the cause of death.
Claire Williamson's death was a turning point in Dr. Hazzard's career. Although there's no record of how, Dora managed to get a message out and was rescued. Dr. Hazzard was convicted of manslaughter and jailed for 18 months. But she would be back. Within 8 years, Dr. Hazzard had renewed her practice, her starvation diet again on the menu. There were more deaths.
The number is somewhere between 20 and 40 people, and we think some of them were disposed of here in this ravine. It's very deep. It's about probably a 100-foot drop from the house down. And, wild animals, bears, all sorts of things have been out here. Cougars, we have a lot of wildlife out here. So it's very possible if somebody was dumped down there that the body was dragged away.
The killing only stopped when the doctor herself became ill.
Well, this is kind of sweet, really, in the end. Linda Hazzard got pneumonia, and she told the world, I'm going to cure myself by using the fast.
Justice came at her own hand.
And she fasted for, I think, 25 days before she basically killed herself and died by her own treatment. I think she had something to prove.
Countess Elizabeth Bathory was a Hungarian noblewoman at the turn of the 17th century.
She was cousin to the king of Hungary, of Transylvania, considered the most beautiful woman in the realm. Educated, brilliant, trilingual, a woman whose castles formed a line between west and east.
A diplomat, the Countess negotiated treaties between these two great empires. But by night, another creature emerged. The Countess of Blood.
There is evidence that hundreds of servants went to that castle and never came back.
It's believed Elizabeth was one of the world's worst serial killers, murdering perhaps 600 of her servants.
The numbers are astounding until you do the math. And if you think of the fact that she lived into her 50s and probably began this as a teenager, so she had 40 years to kill 600 of her servants.
Let's say, for the sake of argument, that she only killed 10% of what she's rumored to have killed.
In all her career, FBI profiler Candice DeLong has never encountered murder on such a scale.
60. And that would still make her one of the most prolific serial killers in the history of the world.
Elizabeth's personal death toll dwarfs any in modern crime. Even more disturbing is why she murdered. Elizabeth believed blood would preserve her youth and beauty. In a macabre prologue to the fictitious Count Dracula from nearby Transylvania, the Countess drank her victim's blood. But unlike Dracula, Elizabeth was cruel fact.
Vampirism is a clinical term used by psychiatrists throughout the world. It is a behavior of consuming blood.
For criminal profiler Candice DeLong, this bizarre ritual is not unique to the environs of Transylvania.
I'm aware of cases in the United States, one very recent and one 30 years old, in which the individuals, both males, killed people for the sole purpose of consuming their blood.
Over time, the Countess's behavior became more extreme as she yearned for youth and eternal beauty.
She would not only drain this blood to drink, but she would drain the blood and bathe in it and cover herself in it and luxuriate in a bath of warm blood.
For this, she needed even more victims.
There are 5 liters of blood in an adult human being. It takes only the loss of 1 liter, or 20% of the circulating blood volume, for the body to decompensate. In other words, for it to go into shock. Death would occur because simply there wouldn't be enough blood to go to the brain. And secondly, their heart would go into ventricular fibrillation or another abnormal heart rhythm. And then subsequently stop and respirations would stop.
The Countess's quest for blood to keep her young was as powerful as it was perverse. Was it a simple iron deficiency or grotesque delusion?
The kind of woman who brutally murders for blood, to my way of thinking, is probably delusional or psychotic.
Countess Bathory was locked in a deadly cycle of delusion, with nothing and no one to bring her back to reality.
And oftentimes, the more a person tries to get that thought out of their mind or that feeling out of their heart, the less they're able to do so. And oftentimes, the more the individual thinks about it, it kind of develops a life of its own. It feeds on itself.
Elizabeth never cheated age nor death. After murdering a noblewoman, her bloody history was exposed. She was walled into her castle tower. The only mercy, food pushed through a slot. She died alone and old. her obsession unrealized.